Welcome. I'm Dana Thomas. I'm a licensed master's level psychologist at Family Service and Guidance Center. I'm a clinician, and I'm also a manager in the CBS department, the community-based services world. And we are here to do a real-world parenting series, and we're focusing on childhood depression this month. So some of the trends that we have seen at Family Service and Guidance Center most recently, a lot of people have seen a lot of things with COVID, and that has still, at this point, still our number one trend that is leading to more and more depression in children and even our parents, and we have seen some of that happening. The social isolation from school was a big trigger for our kids, and we had a very small population that did great because they just didn't like going to school, but the majority of the children love going to school, love having that social interaction, and that being taken away from them for about a year to a year and a half just really messed with them. And that has caused a lot of ups and downs in moods, and parents are now trying to figure out with the shift back into school why maybe it's not going as well as it used to do. And they're just really seeing all these different things and noticing all these different behaviors that maybe they didn't see in their child before. So COVID is definitely still one of our number one causes of depression in children at this point. Some other things that COVID has also played a role into in some of the family dynamics is we've seen several parents who have separated or even divorced through the pandemic, and that big change in the home definitely will cause some big feelings in everybody in the home, especially the children that are impacted. Conflict in the home, even if parents are still together, everybody has spent way more time together, whether we wanted to or not. And so they've got to witness of a little bit more fighting or disagreements maybe than they have in the past. And so that's, raised some bigger feelings of what's going on in terms of depression. And also if a child has medical issues, that can definitely be another reason that can bring about symptoms of depression in a child, because they're dealing with this extra stress and burden of all of these medical appointments and all of these unknowns of, why am I different and why don't my friends have these issues and I still have to deal with these things every day. And that can just be really burdensome for a child. Bullying, this has been going on for years and years, unfortunately, and bullying is still around. And of course, the newest way that we see bullying with our children is on social media, and it can get really nasty really quickly. And there are still a lot of parents who don't really view the social media stuff and aren't really sure what their children are doing on social media. So I really encourage, as a parent, you really need to pay attention to what's going on. Or if a child is spending lots and lots of time on the computer and they're on social media, check in with them frequently, because bullying is still a very big issue. And in teens, some of the bigger issues that we've seen in terms of things that can lead to depression is academic performance pressure. As we're getting closer to graduation, we're thinking about college expectations to become an adult, which is very scary. As an adult myself, I don't like adulting most days. And, being at that brink of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be a kid anymore, and they expect me to grow up overnight, that can be very stressful. And academic pressure is a big part of that, because you have to basically pick, what am I going to do with my life at the end of this journey of high school? And you have to have the good grades to finish that journey strong so that you can go where it is you think you want to go. So academic pressure is a really big one. And then of course athletic pressure as well. Their performance during football or basketball or volleyball, all of those things, that we have to get the scholarship so I can go to the college that I want to go to. My parents can't afford college, so I have to do well in these sports so that I can get the funds that my family needs to help me go to school. A lot of teenagers put that on themselves. And then dating. Of course, everybody starts relationships, middle school, high school, all of that, and the drama that goes with it. Those are all very burdensome for children. And in the dating world, it can get pretty interesting as they are starting out and learning their ropes of who they are, the types of people that they're interested in, and how we have all different kinds of ways of classifying sexuality these days. It can be very confusing, and that can create a lot more stress. Some of the symptoms that we see for children in terms of, it's a little bit different for teenagers versus younger kids. So for younger kids, we tend to see there's a very big decrease in favorite activities. And that one also goes for teens too. But more so in children, where if you have a child who is outside running around, loves to play outside, play basketball, go skateboarding, all that kind of stuff, and then all of a sudden they just want to stay at home, watch TV, that's a big trigger. Something's changed. You need to check in with that child. Loss of friendships, where either their friends are rejecting them because of behaviors that they're seeing at school that they could be afraid of that child. If somebody is acting out in the classroom, that's a big thing, and you start to see a change in their social circle to where other kids are rejecting them, or your child is no longer wanting to spend time with other kids because they don't have the energy or the motivation or the interest in doing that type of stuff. You can notice extreme sensitivity and irritability in kids. There's going to be big ups into giant severe tantrums where they're kicking, they're screaming, they're biting, they're putting holes in walls, they're breaking windows, throwing things at you. All of those kinds of things can be signs of depression. And that's not what we usually consider signs of depression. But in little kids, it often comes out as anger more often than it does as sadness when we think about for adults and teens. So keep eyes on those types of things. Other things to watch for is if we have frequent absences from school or refusal to go to school. They really just have no motivation to get out of bed. They have no motivation for hygiene. I mean, you're fighting with them every day to take a shower, those types of things. Those are big red flags of depression. The typical stuff like sadness, tearfulness, crying spells, those are sometimes present and sometimes they're not, and that's okay. It presents differently in different people. Hopelessness and feeling empty, you tend to see more of that in the teenagers as well. Little kids just usually don't have the words to put to that to be able to explain that to you. And other changes for teenagers that we typically see is there's a big feeling of guilt where they're not really sure where it's coming from, but something in their life has changed and they think it's their fault. They feel very guilty about that. There's changes in sleep patterns and eating habits. They're either sleeping all of the time. A typical sleep for a teenager is usually between 10 and 12 hours, because we know it increases a little bit again when they're a teenager. And we're talking somebody's wanting to sleep 16, 17 hours. They're barely awake. So that's a big change, or they don't sleep at all. So watch for those changes in their sleeping patterns. Eating habits, they either skyrocket and they're eating everything under the sun. Some of I had a young lady recently that I saw who she would eat her feelings until she threw up. And that was just one of her patterns when she was really depressed. She would just eat constantly. And then I've had other kids in my office who just won't eat anything. And they become very focused on, that's one thing they can control about their life, so they just stop eating. And that makes them feel better to be able to have that control. So noticing those changes is also a big sign of depression as well. Teens, we also see running away from home, increased substance use, and then we also have the big ones that are really scary for parents are the really increased interest in death, like topics of death, and then the self-harm and thoughts of suicide. So those are the parts that teens are more about teens. We do have some little kids that do talk about self-harm or suicide, or I just feel like I shouldn't be here anymore, or I wish I was in heaven so I could see my grandma, those types of things. You definitely need to pay attention to those. Those are the biggest red flags when it comes to depression in children. So that is our real world parenting for today. Please come back next Thursday. We'll talk more about living with childhood depression. Thank you for watching, and I'm Dana Thomas.